Welcome, everybody. My name is Anita Crawley, and I'm an educational consultant focusing on equity, online learning, and student support, currently working at Hartnell College in Salinas, California. And I look forward to hearing from Dr. Michele Villagran and Kara, oh, I lost your last name, Price, who will be talking about your voices, valuing and representing student voices. And I'm going to pass it over to you. I will, well, let me do a few housekeeping things. I think probably by now you've already heard about the closed captioning, but let me go through this. We're going to record all the sessions and they will be shared with you just as soon as we close caption all of the recordings. If you'd like to use Zoom captioning in the room, you look at the bottom of the Zoom room and you can select that option. Turn them on or off as you prefer. So I will be monitoring the chat, and feel free to interact with each other in the chat and also ask questions of the presenters. We will probably look at those questions toward the end of the session. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the two of you. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Anita, and thank you to Peralta and for this conference. What a great opportunity to be in this space with you today. I am Michele Villagran with San Jose State University School of Information, and with me is my wonderful, fabulous student assistant, René Price, and we're going to be both speaking about this project. Next slide. But before we start, I wanted to do a land acknowledgement. So we're on the original homelands of the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. We share this space with honor, respect, and solidarity. Without them, we wouldn't have access to this gathering. So just take a moment and reflect on where you're at and in the space you're in. And next slide. So I wanted to give a little bit of background around your voices. This is a project that actually was started in 2022. It's called Your Voices, Learning, Listening, and Sharing. I received a course buyout via the university. I applied for they call it an assigned time award for exceptional level of service so that I could create this project for our students. And it tells, you'll see three different main parts, which I'll just briefly mention here, and then we're going to do a deep dive into what it entails. It involves hosting 4 webinars, 4 community learning spaces, and a quarterly e-newsletter related to diversity topics and events that we're sharing with our academic units. And when I say academic units, I mean the two, the school and the department that are within our college. We're in the College of Professional and Global Education at San Jose State University, and that houses both the School of Information, with which Kara and I are both affiliated with, as well as Applied Data Science, which is a smaller department, but to be inclusive and ensure that we are welcoming both academic units, this project is for both within the college. The project was 1 year. We actually started over the summer last year, and then it kicked off in fall 2022. Next slide. So more about the origins behind your voices. I'm going to talk about the college component a little bit, kind of the background, and then primarily the School of Information. So our college, the academic EDI committee, there was actually a working group, not part of the committee, it was actually separate, but there was a working group that sent out a survey in 2021 to collect data from students within the college. And these are some key findings that came out of the survey. About 56% of students thought they would benefit from events that were EDI focused and had EDI focused guest speakers. 64% thought it would be a benefit for having some type of affinity group that they can join with other colleagues or peers and talk about topics that were relevant and of importance to them. and 15 to 20% were unsure whether the college is supportive of diverse students and welcoming them and their diverse perspectives and voices. So when I originally found out about this, read all the findings, I was just so amazed and thought we need to be doing more. Within the school, we already were and have been doing a lot of EDI related work. I chair the now it's the IDEA committee. It was formerly the diversity committee and have since 2018. So I've been very involved with some of the activities we've been doing as well as other initiatives. And then at the college level, I also chair the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Social Justice Committee, where we've been doing a lot more for both of our School of Information Applied Data Science around, in the former session, around really anti-oppressive education. So it's not like we haven't been doing anything, but this was very telling to me that, okay, we need to be doing more for our students. And I was hearing things through my teaching from students, just comments that would come up in specific issues. So that's why I went to seek out funding or some kind of support or resource to be able to have the time to put together this project and to work with a student assistant to really develop this. Next slide. So a little bit more about the origin, and this specifically comes from the School of Information where we're both affiliated and work within. So the committee has been doing a lot of things around webinars, and the committee includes a student, an alumni representative, a part-time representative, as well as tenure and non-tenured faculty. And so we've been very vested in what we say inclusive excellence and advancing EDI efforts and initiatives across the school. It's tied to actually two specific objectives within our strategic plan. And just in summary, those two are: one, identifying and implementing ways to build in diversity and inclusive excellence into the curriculum. So focused more on faculty and what we're doing within the curriculum to support our students. And then two, providing support to our diverse student body. And within the school, we do have a very diverse student body. Actually, Latinx, the Latina, Latino, Latine is our highest population, as well as first generation. We have about 60% first generation students. Each fall, we do survey faculty to understand what they're doing in their classrooms. And every time recommendations come out of this survey around, we need to be doing more that's diversity centered when it comes to professional development, not only for faculty, but also for staff and for our students. And then additionally, we have these heritage symposiums, which have been going on. But this project is very different. I would say the intent, the whole purpose behind it, my whole dream was that we need to have a different, they can't just be a webinar or a symposium. It really needs to be a focused initiative around elevating the student voice, your concerns, your ideas, events that you might be interested in, speakers that and topics that you as a student really want and need in the school that might not be finding elsewhere. So that's kind of the origins from the school perspective that I'm sharing with you. Next slide. So the components, I mentioned this earlier, it's 1-year projects. So we are actually, sadly, but not sadly, coming to the end of the Your Voices project or initiative, where we're focusing on the student voice and sharing student voices and supporting one another. We hosted 4 webinars. And the reason in the title it's learn, listen, and share. I don't know if I've shared this before with you, Kara, but learning so that we could all learn from one another. And my thought was, because I'm faculty, that I can learn from you as a student so that I know what I need to do, what I need to change as a person, but also in the classroom, maybe my teaching methods or whatever it might be, I need to learn. I also need to sit back and listen. So I need to reflect. If I see something, if I want to ask a question, maybe I need to learn more, I need to just listen to those students, listen to what their needs are, listen to what they want, and listen to how I can then either change something myself or within the classroom or a particular event. And then sharing, it's about sharing and helping support one another. So that's where the three, the learn, the listen, and the sharing came about in the title. And that ties to actually what originally in the proposal and when it got accepted were affinity groups. Uh, we renamed them. That really didn't fit. Many of you probably know what an affinity group is. But we call them community learning spaces, or CLS. These are student-driven, student-moderated, student-facilitated spaces for students to gather as a safe space to talk about topics related to EDI, identity, etc. And then we did put together 4 newsletters. These were quarterly on issues really relevant to the whole profession, I would say. So it could be something related to data science, it could be related to museums, it could be something related to libraries, it could be related to archives, but trying to be very inclusive and collected so many, whether it was at the school, at the college level, at the university, or even external aspects that were going on. And we did solicit student requested submissions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kara to talk about the first aspect.
So we had EDI webinars in September and November of last year, and we had one this year in January and last month in March. So our 4 EDI-focused guest speaker webinars were an opportunity to learn, listen, share, and focus on topics that were relevant to students based on input from survey results and each of the committees. We had 264 total registrants for all of the webinars that we hosted, averaging about 66 registrants per webinar. Planning and outreach to find and secure speakers and coordinate took place in the summer of 2022 before we launched Your Voices. We reviewed survey data and committee input to devise a list of potential themes before we began recruiting through professional networks and groups that are specific to diversity, inclusion, and belonging in the profession, like We Here. Although we identified DEIB themes before recruitment, we only used them to suggest potential topics to speakers that we sought out. The screenshot on the right is actually the webinars that we hosted for Your Voices. Our speakers focused on themes such as visual literacy and cultural arts, whiteness and gender and librarianship, LGBTQ plus identities in archives, and neurodiversity in higher education. Each webinar was conducted differently. So while our fall our fall webinars were conducted more like presentations, our January webinar on the Central Coast Queer Archive Project was more of an informal panel, and they added audiovisual components from the archives to supplement the webinar. And our webinar earlier this month served more like a Q&A session. All of our speakers received an honorarium for their time, and we also archived the recordings as YouTube videos and podcasts available on the Your Voices website. So community learning spaces, formerly known as affinity groups, we held 4 of those. We did them last year in October and December, and then this year we did it in February and April. We decided to put a twist on affinity groups to turn them into community learning spaces, or CLS. We hosted 4 of them to allow students who share one or more identities to gather and learn, listen, share, and talk in a safe space about issues related to their identities. Their discussions would be translated into actionable and equitable steps to improve their experiences at the iSchool and the Applied Data Science, or ADS program. Their discussions we believed were an important tool for change, which is why this aspect of the service project was created. We wanted to positively affect students' well-being and to create a space where these conversations can occur for underrepresented students who felt like they need it. All of them were confidential, meaning they weren't recorded. We also allowed and encouraged students who weren't comfortable to provide aliases as needed along with their pronouns. They had the option of turning on their webcams and microphones, but they could also participate in the chat. And we also enabled closed captioning for students who needed accommodations. So we had 39 students who ended up filling out an interest form that we sent out. The form was created and revised in part of a pilot testing group that we had with different students and staff from the iSchool and ADS programs. And the way we determined the groups that we listed in the CLS form was through, again, student responses in the surveys that were sent out and evaluation of data to identify cultures within both programs. We also asked that they provide some information like their status in the program, if they're a first-year student, a second-year student, when they plan to graduate, availability in Pacific Standard Time, since a lot of the students, even though they are based in California, we do have students all over the country. We also had them choose their preferred affinity groups and any suggestions for groups, their interest in moderating a group that they had interest in, how they found out about your voices, and a way for us to contact them. So of the students that filled out the form, 57 students total signed up to participate in the groups. So in our submissions form, we listed 7 groups: Black or African diasporic, Pan-Latine or Indigenous community members of the Americas, neurodivergents and people with disabilities, Indigenous, LGBTQIA2S or Two-Spirit, well-being, and Pan, East or South Asian and Pacific Islander. Based on these options and the feedback of the students chose neurodivergence and people with disabilities, self-care and wellness, and LGBTQIA2S+. The fourth option was actually a tie between different racial/ethnic identities, specifically the Black or African diasporic and Pan-Latine or Indigenous community members of the Americas. Half of the students who filled out the form actually were interested in being moderators or student representatives for their preferred CLS. We purposely chose students to lead these groups so they wouldn't feel uncomfortable for opening up in the presence of a faculty or staff member who was overseeing the group. Students who were interested and identified with one of the chosen CLSs were contacted and recruited. Although they did not receive an honorarium, they could use the experience towards their e-portfolio, which is a requirement for all students in the school and in the program to graduate in order to graduate. So the students who were interested in moderating, we actually met with them at least a day prior to the date that the CLS was scheduled, and they were trained in a 1-hour Zoom call. All facilitators received a Google Docs script to follow during the CLS, so their training acted as more of an overview of what they should anticipate and how to navigate certain situations. The facilitators were also prompted to collect information on how many students attended. We didn't ask for any names or anything that was personally identifiable. And we also had them write down the top 3 issues that were identified by students from that community. And if they wanted to, they could provide potential solutions, but it was not required. And immediately following the CLS, the students emailed us with feedback from those groups to be reported at the end of our project.
And I'll add too, one thing with the CLS is as submissions came in, or if there was anything, the CLSs we also highlighted in the newsletter. So the newsletter, we sent out 4. There were, we did them quarterly. As you see, we had a staggering schedule depending on when the webinars were or the CLSs were scheduled. So we had October, December, February, and our last one just went out in April. And these newsletters, again, were not just events or sharing, here's this great webinar that's going on. Part of the content was curated such as that. It was pulled from whether it was a school event or university event or something maybe at our King Library that tied to EDI-AB. But we also wanted to collect those, again, any student voices where students could share their perspectives related to EDI. The newsletter, I would say, acted as maybe a facilitator or a space where, and faculty, this did get sent out to faculty, students, and staff and administrators where they could read it, they could pull things from it, share it in their classroom. Students could then sign up to, join a CLS or sign up for one of the events we were highlighting. But it was really an enabler, I guess I would say, where we could build that better sense of inclusion by offering, here's some curated content over like the month of what's coming up. And some of the newsletters actually directly tied the content that was curated, directly tied with the possible CLS that was going on maybe that next month. And we learned from our students too about their perspectives, which then could then trickle down and impact like any of our roles. So actually in August and September of last year, this is where Kara and I met and set up a schedule. We started thinking about content and planning these newsletters, and also developing a form where students could submit, their comments. We investigated tools. What were the best tools to use? We utilize Adobe at San Jose State, so we went with Adobe tool as the tool we utilized for the e-newsletter, and designed the template. And actually, Kara was really instrumental in coming up with the images and just the layout and everything for the design of the newsletter. And then we just would continue to collect over the year, what events were going on, content, what solicitations do we get from students around their feedback. Next slide. Now, these numbers are a little skewed because, right, we just sent out the April recently, and people are probably still looking at our issues. But as of the point when we put this presentation together, there were a total of 642 views, total number of views of our digital newsletters, averaging about 150 to 160 views per issue. We expect the numbers will go up by the time the project completes in May. But this is how many have viewed our newsletters. And I will say too, as an outlet, we sent them, through the school, we have an email list, like a listserv that goes to all students. So we set them out there, as well as to the chair of our applied data science that could share with their students because they're a smaller group. And they were also shared with our college faculty and staff, so that everyone had an opportunity, from dean to all the way down to students and all the way up to view them. Next slide. So as mentioned, we requested content, suggestions from students. We set up a Google form. We used the Adobe tool. It was Adobe Spark, but renamed, I think it's Adobe Express, for hosting, and then distribute them out. And the content was pretty diverse. I mean, we couldn't be essentially 100% comprehensive, but we did our best to pull from those that were, San Jose related, but also non-San Jose. We here as an organization that often has great webinars, so we included those. And Kara, scrolling through, actually this is one of our newsletters live, so you can kind of see the setup, content around GLAM communities. And even if there was a recording and it was open and free, we included those. So it didn't have to be, you had to actually sign up. Maybe it was already post-recorded. We included resources, as well as any feedback or received from the community learning spaces, so we could share that. Of course, removing any identifiers that may have come up in the feedback. There was student interviews. I know one student submitted a book review, so we included that. A lot, I mean, these newsletters could get bigger, right? But we included as much as we could, at least for supporting those couple months until the next newsletter would be coming out. And I did post earlier our blog, which I'm going to talk about right now. It's a WordPress site. Kara, if you want to go to the next slide when you're ready. On the WordPress site, which is our blog, there's everything. It's a catch-all. It's a space where we have, even though San Jose, for the webinars, those are recorded. They're on the San Jose School of Information website and on YouTube. We also captured them on our WordPress site. All of the newsletters are there, and you can scroll through them, as well as details about the CLS. So those, again, student only, so you're not going to see all of the details about the CLSs there. So next slide. The WordPress, we actually utilize one of the tools or creating blogs in several of our courses. So it seemed like a natural fit and one that we could use to create the site without having to go pay somewhere else or whatnot. So it is hosted through the iSchool, and it's promoted. Actually, we worked with our marketing, actually Nicole, within the director of marketing, who helped create our logo. We had some ideas initially, and then Nicole took it to some individuals she was working with to really create our logo. And then to place it on the iSchool website or the School of Information website, we wanted it to be prominent, and it's in several different places. You can find it so that individuals could quickly get to our blog, which had all of the details. And even when we submitted to the calendar where you have the events, so when we were going to host, say, a CLS or if there was a webinar, we included a link to our blog as well as our email address for any suggestions, comments, questions. We really wanted to, and we still are, collecting feedback and input because at the end, which will be end of, well, the semester, which is coming up here in May, over the summer, we'll be collecting all the data, the statistics, and feedback, and putting together a report that will then be shared with the directors, as well as the associate dean and dean of the college. One concern we do have, or we're still trying to figure out, and we have a possible solution, which Carol will talk about next, is about there's no subscribe button, right, for email updates on the project. So this is where our next item, which I'll turn over to Kara, came up as an alternative.
So as your voices progressed, we noticed there was a lot of interest outside of the iSchool and applied data science programs in the project. Since WordPress doesn't provide, or at least for like free websites, doesn't provide an email subscription option for users who are interested in following a blog, we decided to supplement our WordPress website with Google Groups. That way, if individuals outside of San Jose wanted to receive emails and updates on upcoming webinars or newsletters, they could sign up to follow our RSS-like feed every time we posted an update. So webinar attendees who were interested in keeping up with your voices were invited to join our Google group. And on the right is a screenshot of what the feed looks like when members join. Like our WordPress account, it offers the same information and opportunities to sign up for webinars, view our newsletters, and check our recordings from past events. We had initially invited over 200 people. I think it was about 202 people who were invited to join. And as you can see at the very, very top, we have about 184. So almost everyone ended up staying. All but 2 members actually receive emails every time we share a post. So whenever your voice is posted, you'll have an email that basically says verbatim what we posted in our Google group. But the other 2 members decided they wanted to get a digest. So any posts, like the last 25 posts, which we don't have that many, but they can receive those emails. And now here are some memorable comments that we received for different elements of your voices, beginning with our CLS. So the very first quote is from a participant who actually joined our first CLS group on LGBTQIA2S+. And they said that the CLS helped validate their experiences and give them ideas on how to navigate the iSchool going forward. This same individual was actually very active. They attended our webinars and viewed our newsletters pretty regularly, and they even became a moderator for another CLS group that we hosted. The second quote comes from our webinar about the Central Coast Queer Archive project, which was equally emotional as it was inspiring for everyone who attended. This individual expressed gratitude for not only hearing about their work, but for, they're thankful for your voices to shed light on this project. One thing about this project, as well as a lot of students are introduced to this in one of their core classes, Info 200 or Information Communities. And that's part of what inspired us to invite them on to talk a little bit more in depth about their project and the implications it has in the field. Another individual who attended that same webinar said that queer community archives was what got them interested in archives in the first place. And they were very thankful to see clips from the archives about the lived experiences of those who are queer and trans in California. And then the last quote is actually kind of what inspired the Google groups as well. It came from our second webinar titled From Lady Bountiful to Library Cute, Tracing Race and Gender in LIS. This individual is not affiliated with San Jose, but they were interested in getting a certificate for their attendance because of how valuable and relevant they found the webinar to their work. Although Your Voices doesn't provide attendees with certificates after they participate in one of our webinars, it's something that we could potentially consider in the future as we continue this work. So here are some next steps. Unfortunately, with Your Voices coming to an end, Dr. Villagran and I began to discuss the future of Your Voices and potential next steps. And we came up with a follow-up to Your Voices called Savvy, or Students Amplifying Your Voices. Our goal is to develop a digital humanities project that centers invisible minorities and intersectionality in online MLIS programs, such as those who are deaf or hard of hearing, those who are Muslim, queer and trans students who are neurodivergent, so on and so forth. We want students to feel a sense of belonging and community by taking an alternative approach to sympathizing with their experiences. So with this upcoming project, we hope to work with the King Library, which is the library that is connected to San Jose, and student groups to be able to capture the stories of these students and save them for future use in the classroom or for peer-to-peer support. We also want to learn about their experiences in student-led interviews and student-led podcast episodes, highlighting the work that they are doing while they're enrolled at the iSchool or in the ADS program, and also spreading awareness and support for these students through the same channels we use to promote Your Voices, CLSs, newsletters, and webinars. We also hope that with the work that we're doing and its results can inspire other schools with online MLIS programs to replicate Savvy and revise it to meet the needs of their BIPOC students. So we're open to any suggestions or feedback that the audience may have as far as making this project into something that essentially provides solutions to DEIB for online students. And that is our presentation. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon to talk about Your Voices. You can follow us on our WordPress blog. It is that first link, ischoolblogs.sjsu.edu/info/Your Voices. You can also request to join our Google group site. It's groups.google.com/G/Your Voices. And now we can open the floor to any questions that people may have.
Thank you so much. What a program. Oh my gosh. Let me jump in and just ask a question. I keep thinking I must be missing something. It sounds like you've got so much participation with the reward being intrinsic. I mean, they can add it to their e-portfolio. Did I miss anything else? There are no stipends. There are no credits. There are no, did I miss something?
Well, for the webinars, the presenters did receive a stipend, but for actual participants of CLSs, reading the newsletters, or participants in the webinars, no. I would say, very much intrinsic. And I think for me, it was, I saw there's this need. I saw it and I wanted to figure out how to fill that gap, or what can I do in my little bubble, my little world.
Right.
And I've been so fortunate to work with Kara, who's been so instrumental on making this happen, and being a student as well, like the perspective that Kara provides, it's just been, and I'm sure like the intrinsic drive behind your involvement, Kara, has been just, I don't know. We get emotional about this. It's our baby. Kara, do you have anything like, there were no like, incentives or any, it's really that intrinsic, I think, interest, or the need was there.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the students, especially online, you don't have really a space to create that sense of community and belonging unless you're a part of like a student group that does offer like hybrid meetings. So being able to see students participate and seeing like, familiar faces after a while who were in our CLSs and now they're in our webinars and they're, giving us feedback on our newsletters. It felt like, Your Voices does have an impact, even if they may not be telling us directly, but just to see them and how many students sign up for our webinars and how many students respond to our emails. When, you know, if you get a lot of emails, I get like 10, 20 emails a day from the school, but your voices stands out to them. And I think that says a lot to, you know, that drive and that interest in being able to connect with other students, especially students like themselves, and navigating this journey, especially for those who you know, may be first generation or may not be familiar with graduate school and feel like they're more comfortable with their peers than with faculty and staff. So it was phenomenal to hear and to see from other students just how they felt about your voices.
And we will be collecting, we're going to do a final kind of survey to collect additional feedback as we're concluding the project. So I'm sure there'll be more testimonials or more data will be that we can incorporate in our report that then will hopefully help in either getting future funding or future support for the phase 2, which is our savvy. We're really centering the student voice even more.
And all of the activities for next year are just as, they're just as many. Are you able to support it? Is it sustainable beyond the first year?
We haven't got there yet.
Yeah.
I think we're wrapping up this project because this was you know, a service award, so I had a time buyout to create it. So in the fall, we shall see. But I did just get approval. Carol, you'll be getting an email to continue working with me till the end of the year.
Yay.
So we will make it happen. It may look a little different, you know, but I think, and we do have another student that's on board to provide perspectives and support us. So I think it just might be shaped differently, but maybe even more impactful.
Excellent. Other questions, other comments? Jump right in. Oh, we're a very small group, so I think it's just fine to just open your mic. And what are your thoughts?
And I would say if you want to do something in your organization, it really just takes having that idea, putting together a short proposal and figuring out where you can find some resource or support. It doesn't have to be necessarily money, but it could be time, which then translates to money. Or if you have, you know, volunteers or students that are really interested in this work, and you could tie it to, of course, your strategic plan, your mission, the goals of your organization. It just takes one, and then you have your first follower and your second, and then you have a whole crew behind you.
I always almost visualizing a guidebook about, you know, the steps that you presented in this presentation. If there was a guidebook that you could share with others, I wonder if that makes any sense to you, because I think yes, the need, I mean, the magic sauce, I think, was the need was there, and you really spoke to it, and you listened to students about what they needed, and you responded. But you know, you went through some pretty distinct steps and had specific activities quarterly, and it's, I think it would be something that other campuses might adapt to their own needs and students.
Kara and I will chat about that. I wrote it down for at our next meeting. I think
Great.
that's a great idea, and like it could be a helpful guide for those that want to create something similar. And then we could even discuss like best practices and then even challenges, because we have certainly had some struggles along the way. It hasn't been all peachy, I guess.
Right. Lessons learned are always important.
Yeah, as we had talked about before we started this recording, I was actually at a DEI conference specifically for Kansas colleges, 2-year and 4-year. And I had posed the question to, you know, what kind of support are they offering for their students specifically who are online? And a lot of what they said mirrored what Your Voices does and has done. So what I really like about it is regardless of what kind of institution that you're at, and whether it's a 2-year or a 4-year, if it's a rural, if it's, you know, a huge part of a huge community, Your Voices can be adapted to any environment and students will still benefit the same. So I think it would be awesome if we could do like a guidebook and then share it with other colleges and see how they adapt to it. So
Exactly. There's no mystery about how isolating online learning is. We've known it for 20 years, and it's maybe a little less, but not really. No, you know, the fact is the fact. And I just think this is a great idea. I remember we used to think about online student government kind of thing, but this takes it to a different level because you're reaching the core.
And I see James'
Sorry.
comment. James had a comment about how we use Google Groups. Initially, because I recommended the Google Groups, and initially I wanted it to be like where everybody could communicate with one another. But then Kara had the great idea, well, this could be used like a feed where since there is no subscribe button on the website, let's push out the content and get it to, and everybody that initially the 202, we collected when individuals register for webinars, all those that signed up for the CLSs, we included all of those emails, even if they were non-SGSU or external to, they weren't students, all of those individuals were invited to the Google group. And it really has been a great, I think, addition, because with the free WordPress, you can't actually like subscribe and get updates. And I think we're going to continue that. We might just rebrand it a little bit to the Savvy and continue using it.
There you go. So it's just go ahead.
I was going to say, I just think it's phenomenal that even though this project was just geared towards students at the School of Information Applied Data Science programs, the fact that we've had dozens of information professionals from different colleges around the country say, yeah, I want to keep up with this. I want to follow this. Just lets us know that this is work that needs to be done and continue to develop into something hopefully permanent, not just for San Jose, but for other colleges as well, especially for those that may not have, a place where students can have, like an office of diversity. Apparently a lot of community colleges, they don't have those. That's not something that is heard of. So being able to take on a project as an alternative to that can really show the need for pushing and striving for inclusion and equity and belonging and diversity in higher education.
Sure.
And I think a next step too, I know I mentioned it at our last meeting, Kara and I, when we met, grants are a great place to get some support, but we want it to be sustainable, not just for a 3-year period or a 1 year. And then I think this needs to be a permanent program or initiative, whatever we want to call it, within our university. So going beyond just our programs and make it for the whole university. So we'll see what the future holds. We have lots of ideas, and you saw from the last slide. So we welcome your ideas, collaborations, everything. And there's no secrets here. Everything's on the blog. So, if you want to do something similar, talk with us, and we're happy to kind of share our experiences as well. And we'll think about that guidebook.
Yeah, thank you. With templates, make it easy for us, right? Thank you so much. This is a wonderful presentation, and your program is really remarkable. Thank you so much for sharing it. I wanted to remind everybody that this recording will be available on the Peralta Conference website. And if you go to the conference page, you can get access to Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook to stay connected. So we will see you at the next session. And have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.